Okay, Rabbi, you're on the air.
Okay, we are live. Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank everybody for coming. So, last week we sat here debating the minutes, the seconds of what time do you count Sfiras Omer, other halachic ramifications of Sfiras Omer in Lakewood. This week you can sit back and enjoy the show. They were talking about mice. This is not involving Disney.
No.
But today's shir is more entertainment purposes. Obviously it's halachic, but we're not ready to paskin la halacha.
I should have brought my
It's not halacha le maisa.
Hopefully.
But
No pun intended.
But
Wow.
Change the name of the share now?
halacha le maisa. But today's shir is entitled Reb Shayala, Mice and Halacha. Now, first we have to give an introduction,
Meow.
especially for if there's anyone here who's been hiding under a rock, who they haven't heard of Reb Shayala of Karastir.
I saw the ads.
Who is Reb Shayala of Karastir? So just this past week, I believe it was Thursday, was the 100th yahrzeit of the tzaddik Reb Shayala, who lived in a little place called Karastir.
That's in Hungary, right?
And yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and what's very interesting, relatively speaking, in the world of tzaddikim and followers, is he was only nifter 100 years ago, which is not so long ago. And relatively speaking, until the past 5 to 10 years, most people in the Jewish world didn't hear of him. But there's been an amazing revival, and Shayala Karastir, if you look on the Jewish calendar, has become such a major date, his yahrzeit, on the calendar. People mark it for, you'll see in a moment, and it's very much a major focus of what I'll call the current Jewish culture. Now, this Reb Shayala was a big tzaddik, and there's two famous aspects of him. Today's share will focus on the second, but I can't avoid the first. Is Reb Shayala was known as a big Baal Chesed, and he was somebody that wasn't just a Rebbe involved in his own personal avodas Hashem of davening and seeing his Hasidim, but he's very much hands-on, involved in chesed, involving making sure the Jewish people didn't go hungry. All right, no pun intended on that either. But to the extent, they say a story that when he was ill and was afraid, that he's going to pass away, he organized for the day of his levaya that there should be tons of food for all the people coming to participate in his levaya. Like, who's focused? The old Jewish grandmother, did you eat yet? That was very much part of Reb Shayala.
How old was he?
I don't know, but Baruch Hashem, he had a significant amount of descendants, to the extent this yeshiva every year, past few years, of his yahrzeit, a day of learning is sponsored. Something's always sponsored. Zecher Nisas Reb Shayala by his mishpacha. So his descendants are Talmidim here in yeshiva. So
Which yeshiva?
here,
This one here?
this yeshiva. Now they may not look Hasidish, but Baruch Hashem. And so one of the most famous things that you do have nowadays is really twofold on the yahrzeit. You obviously have people that travel, huge groups of people that travel to Karastir to be there at the yahrzeit, and there are people that travel there all year round. Karastir has become a big stop on those who travel the world, places to daven, places to have outings. people, Karastir is a big spot. But additionally, what people do all over is they sponsor food on the day of Reb Shayala's Yahrzeit. They sponsor random food. It'd be nice that they sponsor. Some people sponsor food for Aniyim, but it's not uncommon to find food sponsored in shuls, in Beis Medrashes all around the world for good, healthy, well-to-do people to get nice, fresh food. There's nothing that a Jew, I was talking about it the other day, right? You ever see a Jew at a Kiddush? Boy, there's nothing Jews like more than free food. Someone said maybe free money, but free food.
Free money?
Yeah.
Thanks for never giving us any simple time.
Now,
They stopped doing coasters and whatnot.
I would say one aside on the latest rave that everyone loves traveling to Kvarim. I just saw this week Gamil Abranovich, B'choshev Tzaddik in Yerushalayim. They have a recording of him standing by his father's kever together with his brother, another Choshev Yid. He's davening by his father's kever, and in the video, he's telling people, people nowadays, they run all around the world to daven by Kvarim. And he mentioned in particular, people are running to Karastir. So obviously a big tzaddik. He says, but you know what? There's a bigger schus for a person to daven by his family's Kvarim than to run to a tzaddik. Puts it in perspective. He said, says by Kalev that he went to daven before he had to deal with the Atzos Meraglim. Chumash says a Kalev stopped off. Rashi says he stopped off by Chevron, by Maris Machpelah, and he specifically uses the lashon of Kivrei Avos. Shayala wanted to say it wasn't because Avram Avinu was a tzaddik, Yitzchak Yaakov. It's because it's Kivrei Avos. He says a person should appreciate what Kivrei Avos are. Really, if a person has a choice, a lot of times you got people that could travel around the world, but they never go to their grandparents' kvar, or rarely do. So he made a point. A person should look to connect with one's own family first and foremost. So it's an important hashkafic perspective. But getting to our main event is a famous Ma'aseh of Rav Shayala. And for this, Rav Shayala is nicknamed the Mouse Rabbi. His story has it, again, this is a Hasidic Ma'aseh, take it as you can, but I actually looked this up, this is pretty cool. But Rav Shayala, the Ma'aseh is that a chassid of his was a big businessman dealing in food and grain, and a huge storehouse full of grain, food, and he had a mice issue.
Squeak.
His warehouse was infested by mice. They were damaging the food,
Bring in the cats.
and it was a major issue. So he went and he told his Rebbe, he told him Shayala that he has a problem. So, interestingly, Reb Shayala asked him, back in Europe, it was all about the pirates. Who's the local governor who was involved in running your city? So he asked him, the governor in your city, is he good for the Jews or bad for the Jews?
Very sad.
So
It's a relative question.
the chassid didn't understand the political question. Like, I'm asking you about problems with my mice, and you're asking me politics, what's doing with the pirates. So he said, he's not good for us. Definitely not good for us. So Shayala said, okay, go back to your warehouse and tell the mice in my name they should go to the house of the pirates. So the chassid doesn't question his Rebbe, goes back to his warehouse, and listen to this. He tells all the mice they should leave and go to the evil mayor's house. Evil governors. Well, without skipping a beat, all the mice pile out and march in tandem to the mayor's house, and his storage house was saved.
Sounds like the Pied Piper.
Now,
Can you sing the song that they were singing as they went? All the kids.
based on this story, You will find it in houses all across the Jewish community. I won't tell you how close I've seen them. All across, you'll see pictures of Reb Shayala up. And the legend has it that a picture of Reb Shayala keep mice, rats, rodents. When I was preparing the shir, I said the name of the shir to somebody in yeshiva. They're like, yeah, it works. It worked by me. People tell me this. Now, I did some research. Pretty interesting. I didn't see anyone quote this, but there's a Gemara Yerushalmi. I can put on the sheets. Gemara Yerushalmi is in Demai Parak Aleph Halacha Gimel. There, the Gemara records, the Yerushalmi records, that Reb Pinchas ben Yair, famous Tana of the Brisa that the whole Mesilas Yesharim is based on, that there is an issue with mice. He spoke to the mice, and the mice left. It's a Gemara Yerushalmi, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. So there is a halachic basis for a concept that somehow great people could have effects on rodents, on mice, on rats. Fascinating. The Mesilas Yesharim, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair himself says, right? A tzaddik, the ultimate effect of a tzaddik is when you do mitzvahs, it affects the whole world around you. So it's not such a crazy idea that a tzaddik could have powers, perhaps, to affect the dangers of mice around Jewish people. I don't know about pictures. That's obviously a bigger stretch, but never know. What I would like to deal with today is not Baba, right? Somebody said, what's the grandmother of mice called? Baba Mice. No, I'm not saying any of these stories are Baba Mice's, but I would like to discuss from halachic perspective this case. The case fascinates me. Let's say, this is very practical. Let's say a person has problems with mice in his house. And the way he gets rid of the mice is a means that they end up by his neighbors.
Guy you don't like.
Is one halachically allowed to do that? That was my next question, right? I wasn't sure exactly how they work. You're an older Floridian than me, right? It's brought up. What about by termites? Explain to me, how does it work by termites? You tent your house, so it kills the termites in the house. What does it do to the termites in the neighborhood?
They won't come to your house anymore. They go elsewhere.
They'll go to your neighbors' houses then?
Your house is, can't come to your house. You've got the poison in there. No.
So, but is that something people see? Is that when one house on the block tents, then the other houses have the problem?
I don't think that happens.
It just kills them.
You're not the first person to tell me about the termites. Other people have told me this too.
I've heard of roaches and other
I had
insects, whatever, dealing with any sort of treatment will cause them to scatter away from the home.
And it's more likely to go to the neighbors.
Yeah, they got to find a new house.
We
They got
had,
evicted.
when I lived at Pinecrest,
Yes.
so the next door neighbors, they vacated. The place was empty for a long time. And we ended up with the roof rats. The roof rats live
In that house.
they don't live in the house. They live in by the septic tank. And if there's no food in there anymore, they leave. Okay, and then they end up at my place. And we had to
So
get rid
you
of
could have a lot, what people bringing up, there are a lot of cases, unfortunately, hope everyone finished eating. There are a lot of cases of rodents where we all live in neighborhoods, our house is not so far one from another, and the effects in one house, things going on in one house affect another house. So I would like to talk today from a halachic perspective, how do we view these things? Yes.
So my understanding with the termites is that there are two types. They're the ones that are flying around and they come more like from the rooftops,
They're
and then there's the subterranean. And the subterranean, when they come, if they don't get them all, then they will move on underground. So there's a bigger chance of it going to a neighbor.
Well, those
if
are very
If they
dangerous.
don't do it right.
Don't they plant poison in the ground around the house?
You know, they try to get them
They try
all,
and
but if
get
they
them,
miss, anything that's left is gonna move
Yeah.
next door.
Yeah, but it's not on me. I don't know how to do it. I pay an expert to do it.
Now, what I would like to do, I have yet to find someone talk about this Shayla directly. A Shayla of, not a Reb Shayla, but a Shayla of somebody who has a rodent issue, and directly by the actions he does, it affects his neighbors and the responsibility for that. I haven't seen directly that case per se, but I found other cases which are similar, and I want to analyze those cases and see if we could come back to our cases of where a person is doing a treatment in their home. Would that go in effect and affects others? Is there any culpability halachically? Now, the most classic issue we're talking about over here is what you call Baba Basra, Paraklo Yachbar, Nizkei Shchenim. Nizkei Shchenim is the damage done from one neighbor to another. Now, the Gemara puts down over there, for the most part, a lot of these things are viewed as not your responsibility. We pass them like Rabbi Yossi, al hanizik laharchik. It's upon the victim to take the precautions not to have it. So you in your house have to take precautions not to have rodents in your house. It's upon you. So for the most part, we say victim beware. You have to be on the lookout. However, the Gemara talks about where something is giri delay, something is a more direct cause of damage from one side, there is responsibility there.
Isn't fire the most common scenario?
Yeah, there are multiple. We'll talk about the cases of fire, but there are so many different scenarios between neighbors of what could happen. So Lamaisa, there are things like that which could be tricky. Now, the first case I'll deal with, I have to give credit. Rabbi Dayan Yitzchak Grossman is a Chashava Rav in Silver Spring, Maryland. He's a Dayan in Lakewood, and he happens to be the older brother of a good friend of mine, a Chavrus of mine. Dayan Grossman dealt with a very interesting issue. In New York City, for the past few years, he's been dealing with a major rat problem.
Rat infestation.
Yes, major rat problem. And one of the things New York City has been doing is been making very harsh decrees. I actually saw recently somebody term it as the garbage gezeras, where they're very makbid. People have to totally go through their garbage and take out this.
Very expensive garbage can.
Yeah.
Rat proof.
Crazy stuff they've been doing in New York City.
Composting,
Compost,
locking shelves,
yeah.
right. It's food scraps now.
And Dayan Grossman dealt with, hey, it's push and true that person not taking care of their garbage will attract rodents. Well, what about that responsibility from a Torah perspective? Is he responsible for rodents coming to his neighbors' houses because he has a lot of garbage?
Yeshiva.
So Pashup Shot, very good.
Or is he attracting?
Pashup Shot, that sounds very indirect. That sounds like a grama. But grama b'nizakin is pater avar aser. You yourself can't do anything to do that. You're not allowed to do that. But we Bezdin can't necessarily hold you accountable. So Dayan Grossman brought down interesting psakim. Going through Lo Yachbar over there, from the Rush, he wanted to say that the definition of giri delay, again, giri delay literally means your arrows. It's a halachic term, but it means a certain culpability even for a case which is indirect. Even where there's somewhat indirect damage. But if there's something which is an ongoing damage, which is preventable, That's defined as giri. So if I'm messy with my garbage, and that's an ongoing thing, it wasn't a one-time thing, you had a bar mitzvah and there was lots of extra garbage, okay? No, but your house, you have a side job, you're selling, you make herring, I don't know, chveisfas, sushi, and you have all different stuff normally in your garbage is not necessarily locked down well, and it's a constant thing. That simply would qualify as giri. And on top of that, there's nesivas that says in general the dinim of niskei shchedim are dinim where it's always a balance. It's balancing on the one hand what's called the maziks, how much of a bother is for him to protect and lock down what he's doing, which is triggering damage, versus on the other hand the damage by the victim. Right? This whole issue of niskei shchenim, we said, is in general, the Gemara has a machlokas, al mazik laharchik, al nizik laharchik. Is it the damager who has to do the distance, has to take the precautions? Is it the victim who has to take precautions? So we said by giri, where something is more direct, ongoing, preventable, and especially here where, what are we asking you to do? Just take better care of your garbage. So there are those who are paskin, you know what? If because of your garbage you're causing damage to your neighbors, that's for sure on you. So New York City is taking that position. They didn't consult with Diane Grossman, but they are taking that position to very much inconvenience people with their garbage to prevent the spread of rats. Yes.
We call that nuisance.
Nuisance, yes.
That's what it's called.
What do you say, Josh? Okay. So that's one interesting halakha case of where there is a precedent in halacha that if your garbage is directly causing rodents to come, now that's a pretty direct correlation. Garbage causes rats. Rats could go and do major damage, right? Besides the fright value, which any homeowner will be very unhappy if they see rats. But rats, I think, also eat away at things, right?
The main danger of rats is antivirus. It's very deadly. Antivirus.
Right? Rats carry disease.
Yeah.
If this is a widespread problem and what is really not such a large physical area where there is a tremendous human population,
Yes.
right? So at a certain point, how far do individual homeowner mitigations do anything? And therefore they need to really just deal with the problem from a larger standpoint anyway.
Right, you're asking.
So what am I supposed to do as an individual person when the problem is not going to stop
Okay, very good question.
from anything?
Right? Right.
No. Rats in there. I mean, let's right.
You bring up the issue. Sometimes these rodent issues are bigger than just you and your small enclave having an issue. It's a citywide issue.
Right. This is a like the island.
Right. Right.
Bechlal.
Okay.
Has a problem.
We're going to talk about that. But, yeah.
Now there's a different problem. Now we have a lot of cats.
Now,
I mean,
I'll bring up a similar case.
cats all over the place.
A similar case I'll bring up, which Josh segues right into your question, is sometimes the best person to look for interesting shayalas like this, which I went through quite a few of his svarim, is Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. Zilberstein, Rav in Bnei Brak, is in English they translated a fraction of what is written by Rav Zilberstein. If you look, actually, we give the shir in the Otzar, I might as well give a Torah once in a while. If you look on these middle shelves to the right of Harvey, you see those light brown covered svarim, which literally go over the span of 3 shelves.
To the left.
Right? They're called chashuke chemed.
Harvey's left.
Right?
Harvey's left.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right? In the middle bookcase there are basically, it goes over the span of 3 different shelves of Svarim, Chashuke Chemed. Those are practical shalos of Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, organized based on the Masechtas in Shas. So if you're teaching a Gemara, let's say on Baba Basra, Daf Yachbar, Chav Beis, you look through there, he has a few shalos there. I additionally at home have, it's not as popular, he once published a volume based on Shulchan Aruch, similar type layout, and some of them actually appear in these too, called Meir Sha'arim. Not after the city, but cute. So Rav Zilberstein deals with the following Shayala. In his particular case, he wasn't talking about mice or rats, but they're talking about snakes. And the situation was that there was a snake in a courtyard. Think of Yerushalmi homes, right, where you have multiple homes opening up into a courtyard. There's a snake that was in a courtyard, but eventually slithered its way into someone's backyard. And, oh my gosh, screams, there's a snake. And the wife got on the phone with the husband, you get home quick, snake.
My ex-wife
Right?
did that to me.
Right? Now the husband probably says, get a picture of Shayala up pronto. You don't need me, get a picture of Shayala. Talk to the snake. But Lemaisa, what happened was they hired a exterminator, good money, and they got rid of the snake. Question that was posed, who has to pay for that exterminator? Just this individual home? Or do you say, look, they did a service not just for themselves, but for their neighbors. Not just for the, even if you grant it's a service for the immediate neighbors, could you also view it as a service for the whole, let's say Chatzar? The whole block?
Well, in that case, it would be
Stop trying to push through socialized
collection.
exterminators.
Yeah.
So, Rav Zilberstein said, when he was posed this question, he assumed the halacha is, what do we say here? Would one be able to make a collection from his neighbors? Okay, knock on doors, send them the WhatsApps. Okay, we're making a collection now for snake exterminators. I just found one, got rid of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, 'cause
I
it's
saved you.
Yeah, because it's one snake wreaking havoc on 25, 30 homes or whatever it is. So fine, they should take up a thing.
You think they all should pay?
Well, I can make an argument for that, but not if I've got millions of
Okay,
rats
yeah,
taking
not the
over
whole city. Right,
That's
right.
it. I mean,
That you need Batman.
we're going
right.
out for one.
For that you need a Democrat.
Okay. That you need
out
Trump.
Gotham.
Anyway, so what do we say? Do you think the neighbor should also pay for the exterminator?
No.
It would be nice, but no, I don't think they're required.
No.
So comes Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, and he agrees with the parties over here that seemingly you don't have to pay. In Halacha, he terms it Mavriach Ari. You're chasing away a lion, which the Gemara says that's not called you're giving something to anyone. That's taking away a negative. You didn't give anything to the person. And Memela, the Gemara even talks about cases of a guy saving a damsel in distress. He says a guy saves a girl who's about to be chased by some rodent, and he says, "Will you marry me with the hana that I saved you from that?" Right? So the Gemara said that would not work because I didn't give her anything. I just saved her from something. It's not called a positive giving. So that was what initially with Zilberstein, with Paskin, the neighbors do not have to pay for the rodent or the snake removal.
Well, he does say paturim. He doesn't say it's completely irrelevant to them.
Comes what's very convenient is Rabbi Zilberstein's father-in-law was Rabbi Yoshev Zetzal, big chief posek in Yerushalayim, and he discussed this issue with his father-in-law.
This is after he passed him?
Huh?
After he
Rabbi
passed him?
Zilberstein originally thought I don't know if he gave them the psak yet. His initial take was the neighbor should be exempt. If you look in the middle of your sheets, Vatsasi is the devar of name Or v'chami Maron Agon Rabbi Yashav. Va'amar shekol dayarim sheishruyim be pacha nafshi. All the people in the neighborhood that was afraid for their lives because of the snake. Tzrichel nishtativ midin nana. Everyone has to pay because they did derive benefit. Reb Zilberstein thought, what do you mean? I thought there's Mavriach Hari. He says that's something that's coming in the future. You're afraid something might happen. So Yosef says something in the future that might happen, that there's less responsibility. But something which is clear and present danger right now, where someone's saved from, that is called nena. He makes that distinction.
I mean, if I see a snake in my backyard, okay, so it's near all my neighbors' yards too, but they don't know that it's there. I'm going to call all my neighbors. I just want you to know there's a snake that may or may not be poisonous, and I'm just holding off on calling the exterminator until you know about it so you can be scared too.
So again, it sounds like his difference is that to get a treatment before anyone spots one, that would be Mavriach Hari, and that Rabbi Yosha would admit, that's you don't have to pay for it. But once there's a clear and present danger, the snake was spotted, people are dealing with it. Really, he's not just dealing on behalf of himself. Again, if there's a reason that this snake or whatever would not go from one house to another, it's a different story. But assuming the rodent that you have, and we talked about before, by those other cases, if it doesn't go by you, it's going to be next door also. So really, Rabbi Yosef says there is room to charge your neighbors for such a thing. Now, we don't usually think of these terms. Usually people, when they have problems with rodents, first of all, they may not even tell their neighbors. They're embarrassed. But first, Rabbi Yosef views it is that you're not doing a service not just for yourself, it's for others too. And, now the person will say, no, how about, I offer you, I'm getting, a guy to come down to my house. Would you like to pay for it? How about we do the reverse? I'll come to my house, and how would you like to pay for it?
How about if you don't pay for it, I'll send you some snakes. So there's a problem in North.
That's my next case. How'd you know?
There's a problem in North America with fox that travel from
Back.
the block or wherever they. Fox. What's the plural of fox?
Foxes.
Foxes.
Right.
So we had two of them in our backyard. To get them out of there, it's pretty expensive.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we
You can't hurt
so
somebody.
basically they said just let them be. They'll leave and go to some other neighborhood. Some other house. That's what happened.
They went to someone else's house.
Huh?
And they went to someone else's house.
Right. They won't tell you who. They don't talk to us anymore.
Yeah.
Fox
But
snakes
here it also
Yeah.
are positive good because they eat the rodents.
Oh.
I'm a defense lawyer. I get hired by every snake. Every snake hires a lawyer to defend them.
Here it also only says that it's the people who are chashashul or redes olahorid yaldehem.
Professional courtesy.
If they don't know about it, especially in today's
Right.
society, you generally have fences, even if you don't. Nobody knows.
So I wasn't sure myself. I agree. I'm not ready to pass on halacha l'maisa off reading this tshuva because it seems like there's multiple factors. Number one, it's a clear and present danger. Now the danger they're talking about by a snake is a deathly danger, venom of a snake.
Yeah.
Could we easily apply that to rodents, which may not be as deadly? Not so simple.
They're also deadly.
Right? You're bringing up the fact, is it something you can only pay for if you know there's a problem? Or even if you didn't know. I didn't know you had mice in your backyard. I didn't know you had snakes in your backyard. You want me to pay for them? I'm not afraid until you told me. So you say, oh, I want to tell you, I have rodents. Okay, what do you like to do? So there is a basis for charging for that, Rabbi Yashav says, because there is a benefit. He goes through further in the tshuva. They talk about, sometimes there's a concept called zenena v'zelo chaser. Is I'm benefiting my house when you take care of a problem. If you're going to take care of it anyway, so then I'm sort of like hopping on you. I'm getting benefit and you're not losing. You would do it anyway. True or false? You have mice in your house. You're not just going to say, oh, forget it. If my neighbor's not paying, I'm not going to do it. No, your wife is screaming. Of course they're going to do it. So now the benefit that your neighbor gets is secondary. You're going to do it anyway. So the Gemara even uses the term, it's Midas Sodom, to charge. Sodom-like. You have to do this anyway. So why can't your neighbor just get a benefit from the fact that you have an exterminator? Now you would have to pay for that? So Rabbi Yosef argues back on that point too. He says, I want to find exactly how he says it. Yeah, I forgot. A couple people brought up before issues of fire, which, depending what the houses are made, Baruch Hashem, recently had these major fires in Eretz Yisrael, and a big deal in that, it was don't get me wrong, it was a major issue they had to deal with, but for the most part, the houses were safe because Israeli houses are made out of stone, good old Jerusalem stone. So you don't have the same worry as you do in most other places, that if a fire hits one house, it's spreading to others. So an issue that was dealt with, there's a tshuva from the Shvos Yaakov, talks about a case of where there's a fire in one person's house, and the person basically, not sure fully the Metzias, but basically broke through his roof to get the fire to sort of go up that way and not spread sideways.
That's very normal.
Right.
How do you firemen do that?
Right. To make sure that it doesn't go to the neighbors. So the question is, the guy broke through his house. Can he ask his neighbors to pay because he saved them? So the Shvos Yaakov says no, because you have to do it anyway for your own house. So you're going to go and get payment from your neighbors? So he says it's Zenev V'Zeh L'Chaser. So Rabbi Yosef wants to say that case is not comparable to our case. Because when you have a fire in your house, that's very clearly, you are first and foremost the person getting damaged. Everything else is potential spread. Here, where there's a rodent in a backyard, it's not clear who's going to be the person damaged. It could do damage by you, it could just slither by you and go to the next neighbor. So it's not exactly the same, and therefore Rabbi Yosef hears more that one should be responsible for exterminators amongst the little neighborhood, an enclave, than everywhere else.
To go back to the fire situation?
Yes.
What happens in you attempt to put out the fire, the damage, and that's when
Very good question. Very good question.
The thing that's hard to prove is that how do you know that it wouldn't have done it anyway?
That's a fire. What? You're spraying water all over. It goes through the
Water damage.
It's a very good question. I would pose it like this. Let's say you yourself were the one putting out the fire, not involving third parties.
Benefiting them.
And by you putting out the fire, you did damage to your neighbor's house. Your neighbor doesn't have the fire, it wasn't spreading to him. But, let's play out the case. Let's say a case where he wouldn't be damaged by it, and he has a stone house, you have a stone house. And you just overdid, you haven't shot a water cannon so recently, and you end up shooting through his window, destroying his living room, and don't worry, your next two shots got your house. So, Pashim shot, I would think you're responsible in that case, because that's Adam Amazik. Even by an accidental damage you do. So it's totally accidental, totally under duress.
Again, I think you're benefiting the neighbor by housing his house with water.
Okay, I made the case. I made the case where it was a stone house, and it wasn't going to spread. Where all the neighbor is just a victim. He's not a beneficiary. So if you make a case like that, because that's really the root of what Harvey was asking. So I would think, in that case, you'd be responsible. Sure. Once you start thinking, what's so fascinating about halacha is there's so many cases. Once you deal with halachas of neighbors, of what I do affects somebody else. Yeah, there's an infinite amount of halacha cases you could have, and getting back to our mice case. So I'm the proud piper. I'm getting the rodents to go from one house to another house. So it depends. Again, could I define, what would you say? An exterminator who drives them out, do you think, is that as much of a trigger as we talked about in the first halacha case of the garbage triggering the rodents? What would you say? The same way garbage attracts rodents, poison drives away rodents, and therefore pushes them in the neighbor's direction. Would that be similar? What would one think? We saw a psak that a person who doesn't take good care of their garbage could be accountable for the rodents in their neighbor. Now, would they have to pay for exterminators by the neighbor? That sounds more grummadik. But it's definitely something that I could come to you. Hey, you're causing this. You better do a better job with the garbage. To that degree, for sure, sounds like a culpability. So when it comes to garbage triggering rodents, there we saw a psak that you are responsible. So what about when you drive them out using exterminators? Is that the same? Is that less?
No, it's less because there's nothing to stop the next person from also doing it. Whereas when you're doing the attracting, the other person has nothing at all involved.
Interesting. You're saying the track is when I trigger it with my garbage. So there, I'm negligent with my garbage,
right,
and the rodents are coming now to the block. Here, if anything, look, I'm just trying to get rid of rodents. I'm not looking to damage anybody. Oh, he gave your fox case. Like the guy told you, oh, don't worry, it's gonna be gone from here. I'll tell you where it'll be soon. I do see there is definitely a connection, and we talked about this concept of nene, that when one person benefits, you can't just view it as, okay, I'm tagging along. Definitely if something is a clear and present danger and someone else is benefiting from it, and let's say the mitzias would be, I'm not sure this is true, but let's say if one person tents their house, it's beneficial for the next door neighbor. I'm not saying that is the mitzias, but let's say you would have, not with tenting, or okay, pick a different case, where I exterminate bugs, there's a certain residual effect that it helps my neighbor too. Well, could be according to Rabbi Yosef, there'd be a thing to say, hey, look, I wasn't necessarily going to do this treatment, but I think it's going to be beneficial for both our homes. Would you like to chip in? There is a halakhic basis for such an idea. Now, circling back to the original, look, in the Chassidus Maisalach, it's so much easier. All you got to do is tell the Rebbe tells you to talk to the mice, and the mice just march on. Or today's idea, you get a picture, put up a picture of Shayala, 100th edition, and the mice go away. If only we could snap our fingers, that would be the easiest. But in the real world, careful what I say, but I don't want to be turned into a mouse. But Lamaisa, sorry, I can't stop. What comes out is, there are many, many halachic precedents, some halachic precedents we found today, but there are many out there, which deal with all these niskei shchenim, neighbor relations, and a person should really be cognizant of the actions that they do. How does that affect our neighbors? We don't live in a bubble, and the way I put out my garbage, the way I deal with my rodents, and as much as we can do to be good neighbors, that's definitely something within the purview of what the Torah expects of us. That anything a person could do to help out, definitely very kedai. I'll end with a story. I know of somebody. Okay. I'll tell the story because it's cute. At my wedding, my wife's uncle and my uncle met for the first time. They found out that my wife's uncle just moved right across the street from my uncle in Silver Spring, Maryland. I think they just moved in the summer, see each other. They met at my wedding. And my uncle happens to be a very handy fellow. I won't tell you what he did for a living, but if he lived in Silver Spring, Maryland, you could guess what he did. Let's just call it he was an engineer. And my wife's uncle told me, like, any time I needed something in my house, your uncle always came by, always ready to help. That's a beautiful story. I think that's what builds bonds in communities. We'll have to save this last part for Alan. Make sure he gets it. Put it on the chat. But what really helps out a community is everyone's not just living there by themselves. They're living there as part of a community. Whatever you could do to help someone else, not just go to Shalom Zacher and help out with a meal here and there. But these type of things, what can we do to make our block clean, help out with these issues is a wonderful thing. The more we could do to encourage, especially in the days of Sfira, Beinam Chavero, Matov Manoim, Shavas Achim Gam Yachad. Thank you very much. Wish everyone a wonderful week, and tune in next week.